There are very few opportunities to make a difference in American politics, very few elections that actually matter. And I know we're propagandized in this country with all these get out the vote campaigns, go out and vote for Democrats because these are all Democratic campaigns. The country needs you, it's your civic duty, etc. But rarely is that ever actually true. Most of the time, elections are only really going to go the one way, and your individual vote will not matter. Case in point, where I live in New York City, there's not even a Republican on the ballot for any of my local or congressional seats. The statewide ballots go 60+% to the Democratic candidate for governor, for senator, and for the other senator. And yes, I broke that apart without any real reason. But California is in a different point in time in history. California is actually among those rare instances where an election actually counts and the results could be dramatic. And what will be the future of the Golden State? Uh-oh, I said Golden State, that means gold. Quick, short sponsorship from Noble Gold before we get back into this. Have you ever heard of shrinkflation? Well, if you're not aware of the term, it's best to think of it as a stealth way of inflating the currency. This is where you get less burger, less candy bar for every dollar that you spend, and everybody pretends like things are normal. But despite the fact that we see shrinkflation everywhere, the Fed just claims that this isn't a problem. But Noble Gold has got you covered. If you open up a precious metal IRA, you can keep up with the rising prices, hedge against inflation, and retire worry-free. And this month, they're giving away a giant America the Beautiful 5-ounce coin to anybody who signs up for one of these IRAs. If you want to sign up, go to my affiliate links, pinned comment, top of the description, or call them at 877-646-5347. Again, that's 877-646-5347. Get this ridiculously awesome oversized coin. It's heavy, it's weighty, it's 5 ounces. I kind of love it, and I'm going to keep it with me forever as a treasure. So as many of you have likely already heard, right now California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing an incredibly tough recall election. Newsom, once a surefire contender for a Democratic nomination for president, is now facing the chance that he will be wiped out, and the person that is likely to replace him, in fact, almost guaranteed to replace him if he loses the recall election, is one Larry Elder, the radio show host. And the media is in full panic mode. They're throwing everything at Larry Elder, including the kitchen sink. They've labeled him the black face of white supremacy because Larry Elder doesn't play games on racial politics. Larry Elder doesn't excuse problems in the black community by blaming systemic racism or these invisible white people behind the scenes, pulling all the strings and removing all agency from these people. But it is worthwhile to point out how we got here before we talk about what you can do in the California recall election. Now, I remember whispers about Newsom's recall campaign among conservative circles, especially as the government restrictions during the pandemic got a lot more stronger. However, in blue states where people are largely in favor of restrictions, they want everything restricted because they're absolutely terrified of the virus, I didn't think initially that this could gain steam. However, the Democratic hypocrisy that we've seen on display throughout the course of this entire pandemic, whether it be Chris Cuomo being outside without his mask while he's praising Governor Andrew Cuomo and even trying to get up in somebody's face and fight that person for calling him out on it, or Barack Obama's 60th birthday party, hasn't not impacted the state of California and one Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom had some of the strictest COVID restrictions across the country. Almost a third of California's small businesses are shut down, never to be returned again, due to the hypocrisy of Newsom. We saw video after video of restaurants not able to open because they're deemed unsafe, while right across the street from these very same restaurants, we have movie studios able to have catering in almost identical booths, except they're further apart because that's considered COVID safe.
I'm losing everything. Everything I own is being taken away from me. And they set up a movie company right next to my outdoor patio, which is right over here.
Angela Marsden, owner of Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill, outraged and emotional, posting this video on social media after she saw production tents and tables set up in a parking lot just a few feet from the outdoor dining area she's not allowed to use.
They have not given us money and they have shut us down. We cannot survive. My staff cannot survive. Look at this. Tell me that this is dangerous, but right next to me as a slap in my face, that's safe. This is safe.
And the movie industry is really big in Hollywood. But it got even worse for Newsom when he was photographed running up a $12,000 tab with a bunch of lobbyists that he, by the way, set up these COVID restrictions with, without any masks or social distancing. This was while restaurants for us, the regular people, or for regular people in California, were completely closed down. And after these photos got out there, after it came out that Gavin Newsom exempted his own winery, the thing that his family owns, from these COVID restrictions, the people got mad and they blew past their signature requirement in order to force a recall election. And the polls look really tight. Newsom could lose and Larry Elder could be the governor, and he 100% deserves to lose. Look at this man throwing out garbage, trying to impress people. He hasn't done a damn thing in California about litter, about homelessness, about any of that in years. And now in full panic mode, he's like, look at me, I'm picking up the trash personally. You're supposed to run that from the governor's mansion, not personally out there picking up trash. And he's done a lot worse than that. Newsom notoriously lost $30 billion in unemployment benefits. He allowed it to be stolen while Californians were awaiting those unemployment benefits. So he shut everybody down and then wasted $30 billion giving it to Nigerian scammers. I'm not joking about that. And prisoners who did not qualify for unemployment benefits. He's also presided over huge increases in crime in various states across California in his pursuit of criminal justice reform. What was absolutely hilarious is that former Senator Barbara Boxer was mugged, and I'm not saying it's hilarious that she was mugged, but it was in Oakland, and Oakland is one of these places that brag about how they're diverting resources away from their police officers to community reinvestment, because I don't know if you guys know this, the criminals, they're just the victims of poverty. They mug people and steal their cell phones so that they could exchange those cell phones for bread to feed their family. But it's not just incompetent management of unemployment benefits. It's not just overly restrictive COVID policy that only applies to the plebs, but doesn't apply to Newsom and his lobbyists. And it's not just the rise in crime. Gavin Newsom also is terrible at managing the forest. A lot of people are going to say forest fires, climate change, forest fires, etc. But a lot of this is down to mismanagement of forests. If you don't do the maintenance and remove the stuff that burns quickly, fires are going to burn longer and for much more territory. On top of that, there's also problems in California education. 75% of Black students in California cannot read when they're in 7th grade at 7th grade levels. When they're in 3rd grade, they can't read at 3rd grade levels at about 50%. And Newsom's response to this is to work on a critical race theory, an ethnic studies curriculum that is mandated by law, even though they're still working on the curriculum. So they passed the law, they signed it into law, saying that this curriculum will exist in 2025, and now they're hashing out the details about what will be in it. These are the priorities of Gavin Newsom while California is in a state of crisis. They have hugely high tax rates. I'm sure you've heard about people fleeing the states, business fleeing to other states. All these problems in California, including a housing crisis that Gavin Newsom hasn't addressed, but here's a video of him picking up trash, and look, he's wearing a mask. What a great guy, even though he's vaccinated, even though he's outdoors, and those requirements aren't held for his winery, even in the indoor portions, because Gavin Newsom is better than you, and his family's winery needs more business. Also doesn't matter when he needs to go out and run up a $12,000 bill for a dinner with his lobbyists talking about how they're going to restrict your freedoms. Point being, Newsom, once the darling of the Democratic Party, is incredibly vulnerable. And instead of this being like a head-to-head election where Larry Elder needs to get a higher percentage of the vote than Gavin Newsom in order to take the governorship, this is a recall election, so all that has to happen in the state of California is for people to vote yes on the recall, more people than not, and Newsom's not the governor. Then all the recall candidates get sorted through, and whoever gets the most amount of votes of those recall candidates will be your governor. And since the Democrats have bet the house on Newsom, they're not running a single serious candidate in the recall election. This leaves Larry Elder with a plurality of the votes in the recall election, which would make him the governor had people in California voted no on September 14th when all ballots are due. So if you're in the state of California, vote yes on the recall election. I would like you to check Larry Elder's name for the second choice, but get Newsom out of office is the number one goal. That's always been the goal, and that's the thing that the Democrats are desperately trying to fight against. And a lot of people are saying, California, listen, they have a 2/3 majority in the assembly and in the state senate, so Larry Elder is not going to really be able to do anything. But unlike other people who are famous people that run for office, Elder has a plan, and he has a very good understanding of the powers that are granted to him as the governor of the state. So he's laid out in interview after interview exactly what he would do had he become the governor.
Well, I don't believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be running. And I spoke with former Governor Pete Wilson about this very same thing. And this may surprise you, Ben, but there have been lots of bills that have been vetoed under Arnold Schwarzenegger, even under Jerry Brown. And not a single vetoed bill has been overridden in California in 40 years. Turns out, once you veto something, you explain to Californians why the bill was a job killer, why it was stupid, and lo and behold, the lawmakers don't have the gumption to override the veto. I also have the ability to declare a statewide emergency, which I intend to do regarding water, regarding housing. I have the ability to have a line item veto. And as you know, the commissioners in California are very, very powerful. Commissioners like the Coastal Commission, like the Public Utilities Commission. I'm going to appoint people that are far more sensible. I have the power to declare a legislative special session, so I have to deal with just one issue at a time. And of course, I have the ability to pulpit. So you add all those things up, you can really reverse some bad things here in California.
Now, there are a couple of things that are crucial in what Larry Elder just said. First and foremost, he has a line item veto. And even though the Democrats could technically override a veto of a governor, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will. It hasn't happened in the state of California in 40 years. And we know from looking at the Democrats in Congress that there is some disagreement among the Democrats. So even though they technically have a 2/3 majority, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to vote as a bloc. Also, Larry Elder has spoken time and time again about CERCA, this crazy law in California that allows the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people, to sue any developer for virtually any reason and delay development by on average 2.5 years per lawsuit. He's talked about lawsuits against developers trying to build housing in the state of California taking up 22 and a half years before they were ultimately resolved.
I am from California. My father came here in 1945, right after the war. He worked 2 full-time jobs as a janitor cleaning toilets. And even with that meager income, he was able to save his nickels and dimes and purchase a home that's still in the family in South Central Los Angeles that is now worth $600,000. Somebody with an 8th grade dropout education like my father could not duplicate his path from poverty to the middle class if he worked 3 jobs. That's because the cost of living has gotten so outrageous here in California, largely because of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, that enables virtually anybody to stop anything for almost any reason. That's why the average price of a home in California is $800,000. The average price of a home in California is 150% the national average. And I think I could do something about that.
Now, once Larry is in office and he declares homelessness a state of emergency, and then he starts fast tracking all these building permits, construction is going to start, and the Democrats are going to want to push back. The environmentalist dorks are going to want to push back. But once the construction is started, once you start digging the hole, you start building up the building, let the Democrats come out against Larry Elder on the issue of affordable housing. I cannot wait for them to have that fight, and Larry Elder looks like he is willing to have that fight. And that is the same thing that is true with a bunch of different issues that he mentioned. He also talked about a ballot initiative that he's going to be supporting, and this ballot initiative will attach the $15,000 that California spends on educating each student to the student and give it to the parents and allow the parents to use it to send them to whatever school. So if they like their zip code school, if they like how the city that they're in or the state of California is functioning, they just send their kids to the regular school. However, if they don't like it, every single parent in the state of California would have the option to send their kid to a charter school, to use that money to finance all or part of a private school, or they could use it to spend on materials related to homeschool. So Larry Elder's going to be arguing and advocating for, at the governor's mansion, a universal school choice policy. Again, let the corrupt teachers union come out against him. They're already backing Newsom. They've already stuffed his pockets with $50 million Democratic donors have, and a huge portion of that is the teachers union. And Larry Elder is prepared to fight them because this is who he's been his whole entire life. He's not going to be a soft Republican like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who all of a sudden, after being a celebrity, didn't like the slightest bit of pushback from teachers and then governed as Democrat light. He's actually going to fight back against it. And again, they have the powers in California. Newsom's been using them to declare these emergencies and grab these powers. Make the Democrats stop him in that state. Make him put the mask back on everybody. Make him implement this COVID testing on everybody. Make him not enforce the laws as they're written for criminals' benefit. Make him do all of these things if you want bad results for the Democrats. Because this is all about changing the tone in California. He's going to have about a year and a half to function as governor, or actually a little less because the election's in next November. So a little over a year to function as governor. And that is going to be the time for this guy to prime the pump for California growth. That's going to be the time for Elder to get those houses and affordable units into the ground from developers, not from corrupt government policy.
One of the frequent guests I have on my radio program is an economist, brilliant economist named Leo Hanian. He teaches at UCLA, and he says because of CEQA and other policies, the average price of a home in California is literally 50% more than it otherwise would be.
Somehow keeps consistently driving up the cost of so-called affordable housing to over $800,000 per unit. He's also not going to play ball with the stupid high-speed rail thing in the state of California.
Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is, to the extent that there are mandates for state workers, for example, to be tested once a week and to wear face masks at work, which Gavin Newsom just handed down, I'm going to repeal that before I have my first cup of coffee. Also, as I said, I'm going to declare a statewide emergency on water, a statewide emergency on housing, because part of the homeless problem is because we don't have enough low-cost housing apartments for people once they're treated, once they get up off the streets. And I'm going to absolutely do something about the schools.
As I said before, when it comes to housing, make the Democrats fight you on building reservoirs so Californians can actually have more water. Make them veto that. Make them side with these environmental nut jobs that humans in the state of California should not be able to have running water because we need to save the endangered tree that nobody's ever heard of. That might actually only be endangered in a small region because if you haven't heard, the Invasive or the Endangered Species Act also doesn't allow you to do something that would damage a species that is plentiful in another area if a small portion of their population is on the verge of going extinct theoretically in your area. So theoretically, 95% of a bird's population could be located outside of the state of California, but because the 5% inside California is actually going down in number, they would be considered an endangered species, even though the vast majority of that bird's population exists outside of the state. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's a part of the Endangered Species Act. Larry Elder's not going to play that. He's going to say the people of California should have water reservoirs. We've known about this crisis for years, and we should stop worrying about climate change and talking about it in the abstract and cutting our carbon so that in 100 years, maybe we lose less water. We should be building reservoirs now in the state of California. You know, common sense policies that if the Democrats actually want to oppose, it would be much worse for them if there was actually somebody in the state on the other side of that.
But the other big thing that will happen is this. A lot of people feel that Dianne Feinstein mentally is in worse shape than Joe Biden. No one's seen her in weeks, if not months. And there's a good chance that once I become governor, she may no longer be senator. And as you know, we have a 50-50 split in the Senate in Washington, D.C. So this would be a profound policy shift and power shift if I appoint a Republican successor, which I most certainly will do if and when Dianne Feinstein vacates that position.
And this is the final and most crucial point related to this election. Dianne Feinstein is 88 years old. 88 years old. Now, there's a bunch of rumors surrounding Feinstein about her not being seen in a few days, and maybe she's in poor health, maybe she's in poor mental health, and there might be a situation where either she passes away or she decides to step away from her Senate seat. And when that happens, somebody has to appoint a representative to go be that senator in order to go to Washington, D.C. for the interim until they have another election. Larry Elder could be that person. He could replace Dianne Feinstein, and he's not going to replace Feinstein with a random generic Democrat. He would replace Dianne Feinstein with a Republican, giving the Republicans a 51-seat majority in the Senate going into the 2022 elections. Essentially, the Republican Party nationally has been hamstrung when it comes to the federal government because the Democrats have a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. Now, they have a very slim majority in the House, and now we're talking about maybe flipping one seat in the United States Senate if people just vote yes on the recall for Gavin Newsom going into 2022, where hopefully the Democrats will lose more seats in the House and the Republicans will actually be in a position to constrain President Joe Biden. This is a major election. This is why, on top of me telling you to go out and vote if you're in the state of California, turn in your ballot by September 14th, I will also be linking to Larry Elder's support links in the description of this video so you can support his candidacy. This is a big issue, not just for the people in the state of California, but it's a huge issue for national politics. This is why I said, while most elections where people say it's the most important election of our lifetime, it's going to change the country, our election, this just totally matters, that's usually propaganda. It's actually true in this case. It's actually a big deal when we're talking about this recall election, and there's an actual opportunity to not just capture the governor's seat in the state of California, to not just get rid of a once rising star in Gavin Newsom, but to take hold of the United States Senate if something were to happen to 88-year-old Dianne Feinstein. Again, she might step away, she might be having health issues, who knows, but I want Larry Elder in a position to make a decision about who's going to replace her over Gavin Newsom. And I think that you should too if you're a fan of this channel. I mean, you know the left is terrified of these possibilities just based on the way that they're attacking Larry Elder. They're calling him the black face of white supremacy. An absurd notion, but they're trying to attach it to him because their only go-to move is to call somebody a racist, and very inconveniently for the Democrats, Larry Elder happens to be a black man. They were hyping Caitlyn Jenner really early on as the candidate to be the person to take the seat, which would have obviously led people who don't want a nutjob Kardashian running their state to vote for Gavin Newsom to stay. They tried every dirty trick in the book. They're now smearing him as a sexist for quoting a study that was done by a woman about the effects of local news and the differences between men and women's knowledge on certain policy issues, according to an academic researcher, not according to some crazy Republican. Every dirty trick in the book they are trying against Elder, and there's a reason for that. And I think all of us should get behind Larry Elder's campaign. We should get behind the recall of Gavin Newsom, because our only other option is just to give up, throw our hands in the air, and say, oh, well, I don't think theoretically if he were to win, he would be that effective, so I don't even want to give it a chance that it might work because reasons. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, you know what to do. You show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content with the subscription button. Support me by clicking the support links in the description. Then you do the forms and all that. This has been me talking about the California recall election. Till next time.